Have you noticed more fat around your middle after 50 and you've decided that 2026 is the year you're going to do something about it? Now, I could give you a diet designed to shed 20 pounds in record time, but there's absolutely no point my wasting your time because statistically you're just going to put it back on again. Rapid weight loss reduces the body's resting metabolic rate, which is associated with weight loss plateaus and regain. So in this video, I'm going to give you what most diets skip, a combination of nutrition and psychology. With expertise in both is how I work with my clients to create a lifestyle that supports sustainable weight loss. I'll take you through a science-backed 3-stage method to set clear goals, shape up your nutrition and stay on track when life gets messy. A bit like Atomic Habits and a Mediterranean cookbook got cozy and made a baby. Okay, bit weird. First, a little context. After the menopause, our biology shifts, our estrogen drops, and we start to accumulate more fat around our midsection. This is a problem, and it's not just about appearance. Visceral fat lies deep underneath our abdominal muscles. It can infiltrate into our organs where it's associated with metabolic consequences like insulin resistance, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. Our overall weight and our body fat percentage, well, they both just increase with age. But the visceral fat is the dangerous kind of fat that we need to try and lose so we can age healthily, as well as feeling more comfortable and confident in our skin and clothes. The good news is there's a lot of research out there about how to reduce visceral fat and how to create lasting lifestyle changes supported by behavioural science. So let's dive straight into stage 1, the plan. This stage is all about defining and breaking down your fat loss goals, and we're going to do it in a couple of steps. Now, you may be tempted to just skip ahead straight to the section on food, but I urge you not to, because this stage is really important because it's how you create a solid plan. And like the A-team, you will love it when a plan comes together. And to help, I've put all of this into a workbook. You can download it. You'll find it linked in the description box below. So why not pause, go and download it and do this in real time? Why not? There is no time like the present. Now, the big problem with any lifestyle change is it can all feel a bit vague. Get healthy, okay, but how? How exactly? For example, you make a start with a diet, you buy the recipe book and you get stuck in, but pretty soon you start to drift and you get fed up with being good all the time. And this is because you've lost sight of the destination, and you've also probably taken being good a little bit too far. More of that later. Ask yourself this: would you go on holiday if you didn't know the destination? Now, you might be one of those really spontaneous types who would, but you would want a little bit of detail. For example, you'd want to know if it was a mountain or a beach, snow boots or bikini, because there is a bit of a difference. As Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, begin with the end in mind. And I've identified 3 steps in setting health goals that give them the best chance of actually happening. Firstly, I'd like you to do a little bit of visioning. Now, it sounds a bit woo, but bear with me because this is how you decide on the destination. It's the equivalent of browsing through exotic destinations on the internet. Ask, where do you see yourself in 6 months? Imagine there was absolutely nothing that could stop you from reaching your health goals. What would that look like? Write it all down. If it helps, imagine future you could come and talk to current you. What would they say? How would they describe their life? Are they more energetic, more confident? Have they come off their blood pressure meds? Tying your goals to your vision increases something called self-efficacy. This is the belief in your own abilities to achieve the thing. The second step is to break that vision down into practical goals. Because chances are your vision feels a little bit out of reach, perhaps a little bit overwhelming, and you're not sure how to get there. You need something specific. This is like knowing where you want to go on holiday, you've just not planned it yet. You don't know how to get to the airport. Heck, you don't even know which airport. You don't know what you're going to do when you get there, and you haven't packed yet. All you know is you're going to the Maldives. It's terribly exciting, but you need the details. So map out exactly what has to change to get to your health vision. It has to be specific and measurable. And these are your goals. Now, they will almost certainly involve food in some respect, but they're also quite likely to involve one or more of the following: sleep, stress, and movement. What do they need to look like to get to the future you? I'm going to give you some examples of goals. So food, eating nutritious food most of the time with less snacking, and keep watching, so I'm obviously going to give you a way of doing this. 2, movement, perhaps a brisk walk for 5 days out of 7, because we know aerobic exercise is superior at reducing visceral fat. And strength training, perhaps twice a week, so you can hang on to muscle when you lose fat. Sleep, so sleeping for 7 to 9 hours a night so you've got more energy. And stress, having at least one stress relieving technique in your toolkit to help reduce stress-induced snacking. So by now you should have a list of defined goals with measurable results, so you know what needs to have happened for you to have reached them. And the third and final step is to do some reverse engineering. And this is where you break down those goals into manageable steps. So chunk them right down, and I want you to come up with one small action you can do each week that's going to take you closer to one of your goals. One of the biggest mistakes I see women make is to jump into a new habit which is just too big. For example, telling yourself you'll eat clean all the time. And this is not a term I recommend you use, by the way. Let's remove some of the judgy language from around food. So you're eating clean, but soon it all feels a bit too much, too difficult. And if you're really honest with yourself, quite miserable, and you crave ice cream. So one day, after a particularly bad day at work, you end up elbow deep in a tub of Haagen-Dazs, feeling like a bit of a failure and not feeling very good about yourself. And by starting too big, you set yourself up to fail. The solution is to go small, really small. In fact, you can never go too small, as long as it's moving you in the right direction towards your goal. Let's think about fibre. Now, we should all be aiming for 30 grams a day, but suddenly upping the amount of fibre you eat, well, that could be overwhelming when it comes to meal planning and shopping. And it can also cause a few digestive issues if you increase fibre in your diet too quickly. Now, we've got around 21 meals in a week, so why not start adding extra vegetables to just 5 of them? And if that's too much, try 3 or 1. Whatever feels doable and achievable for you and your schedule. Now, I'm a firm believer in doing the very best that you can for you, not mythical you or someone else on the internet, you with your busy life and unique body. You may have caring responsibilities, you may have issues with your own chronic health, so do what works for you. Go through the workbook, pick a weekly action, and then write it down, because the science shows that the very act of writing it down makes it more likely to happen. Then do it. At the end of the week, ask yourself how it went. Did it work out or not? And if not, can you learn from it? What could you do differently? What needs adjusting? Then pick another action next week or next fortnight. Plan, do, reflect, repeat. The power of small habits is that they compound and lead to big changes, so start with baby steps. And ideally find someone to keep you accountable. No, it does not have to be a coach. It can be a friend or family member or person in an internet forum. One of the things the internet does really well, apart from amusing cat videos, is connecting people. So now we've got our goals and we've thought about chunking them down into small weekly actions. Let's think about a nutrition system that is both realistic and not going to leave you miserable. This can be split into what to eat, how to eat, and how not to lose your mind. And in terms of what to eat, when it comes to visceral fat loss, there's a couple of different dietary approaches that you can try. And the best method of choosing one is startlingly simple. Choose the method which works best for you, one that you think you can stick to and one that you're going to enjoy. Because a diet is absolutely no good if you can only keep it up for a few weeks or months. And beware social media hype and people saying that their way of eating is the only way. This is simply not true. Our biology is as unique as our eye colour, and different things work for different people. For example, some do absolutely great with intermittent fasting, other people, including myself, don't. Some people can sustain a really low level of carbs for a long time, but most can't. Now, when it comes to long-term weight loss, the science shows us that there is absolutely no difference between high fat, low carb and low fat, high carb. So pick the combination that works for you and you're gonna stick with. Now, the diet with the most evidence behind it, and the one that I personally think is easiest to stick to, is the Mediterranean diet using low GI complex carbohydrates, the sort you find in fruit, vegetables and whole grains. And there are a few principles. The first is eat adequate protein. Now, I am planning on making an entire video about how much protein is recommended for postmenopausal women, so let me know in the comments if you'd like that. But as an easy start, aim for 25 to 30 grams per meal. Eat enough fibre, as I've said, aim for around 30 grams a day. Increase your intake of vegetables and fruit, add in some seeds and go gradually. Swap out any refined carbs for the low GI whole grain equivalent because insulin resistance increases as we age. Avoid added sugars, particularly in sweetened drinks, including fancy coffee. Prioritise the healthy fats, such as those found in olive oils, nuts, seeds and avocados. Aim to eat fish, of course, if you like it and you're an omnivore, a couple of times a week, including oily fish, which is high in the omega-3 fatty acids. Get some beans and legumes in a couple of times a week, 3 or more is ideal, and they're associated with long-term positive health outcomes. Reduce your intake of ultra-processed foods, which are high in fat, salt and sugar. So this is your burgers, your pizzas, cakes, cookies and pastries. Try to include a little fermented foods in your diet. The easiest is fermented dairy, i.e. yogurt. Plain Greek yogurt, well, that gives you protein as well because it's strained. If you eat meat, stick to lean cuts. And if you drink alcohol, keep it minimal. In particular, avoid those weekend blowouts. Now, the Direct Plus trial showed a version of the Mediterranean diet which was high in plant proteins and polyphenols, so those are the beneficial compounds found in fruit and vegetables, was associated with a loss of visceral fat of around 14% when compared to a standard diet. And a regular Mediterranean diet reduced visceral fat by 7%. Now, in terms of how much to eat. Now, the simple act of changing the quality of your diet and moving away from processed foods and added sugars to whole foods, well, that might be enough to reduce the belly fat in itself because whole foods tend to be less calorie dense. Now, if you're already cooking from scratch and still want to lose a little bit of fat, then you're going to need to think about portion size and how much you're eating. Because if we eat too much, yes, we can still gain weight from healthy food. Now, I've heard the phrase, not all calories are equal, multiple times. And to some degree, there's some truth in this because 100 calories worth of Greek yogurt is going to keep you feeling fuller for longer than 100 calories of cookies. But equally, a calorie is just a measurement of energy, and the only way to lose weight is to burn more calories than you consume. We cannot argue with the laws of physics, although there is usually someone who will, so please keep it reasoned and respectful in the comments. Now, the classic advice is to stick to a calorie deficit daily of 250 to 500 calories. To keep it proportionate to your starting point, around 15 to 20% of your daily energy requirements is about right. And if you've absolutely no idea what your daily energy requirements are and you're curious, I've excelled myself at the tech and made a calculator. It's linked in the workbook. Again, you can download that below. I've also put some information on the same page about protein intake. Now, I said at the start, it's vital to make sure you're eating enough because if you drop the calories too low, not only is the resting metabolic rate going to go down as your body tries to avoid starving, your hunger hormone ghrelin is going to ramp up and no one wants to feel hungry all the time. So how do you manage your portions to make sure you don't overeat? Now, I think there has to be a degree of personal preference here, so I'm going to give you 3 methods, and it all comes down to tracking. To track or not to track? That is the question. So number 1, logging your food in a calorie tracking app. Now, I've had some clients who are die-hard calorie counters, but most people find it time-consuming, boring and not very sustainable in the long run. Plus, some people find it really triggering if they've had a history of yo-yo dieting and they just don't want to hyper-focus on the calories. But the biggest issue with tracking is accuracy. On average, people track about 80% of what they eat. If they've ever lived with obesity, it's even lower. We tend to underestimate what we eat and overestimate what we burn. And ideally, if you're tracking, you need to weigh your food because we're not very good at eyeballing portions. For example, pouring dry, uncooked pasta into a saucepan. Have a go, measure out your normal portion, then weigh it. Is it the recommended 50 to 75 grams? Because it's really difficult. And most fitness trackers overestimate the calories burnt from exercise, so don't rely on them. And finally, food labels, well, they can be out legally by up to 20%. So that 500 calorie salad, well, it could be 400 calories or 600 calories. It's all legal. However, a short period of tracking can be useful as an awareness exercise or to see what some of your favourite meals score. There's usually a few surprises. My suggestion is if you want to track, do it for 3 days maximum, 2 weekdays, 1 weekend. Now moving on to the other two methods, there's a full non-tracking approach and a hybrid method. So number 2 is balancing your plate, and this is probably the easiest method. And for this, I'm going to reference Canada's excellent dietary guidelines. So split your plate into half and half again, and fill up half of it with non-starchy vegetables. And this is instantly going to up your fibre intake. Fill a quarter with either whole grains or starchy vegetables, and a quarter with protein. Finally, you can add a little healthy fat. Think a drizzle of olive oil on your vegetables, a sprinkle of nuts, or a little bit of chopped avocado. Balancing your plate with enough fibre and protein will fill you up and keep you full between meals, reducing the need to snack. Or if you want to get even more specific, you can use your hands. So go for a palm-sized piece of protein, 2 cupped handsful first of vegetables, and as far as whole grains, go for about the size of your fist, which is about 50 grams of uncooked weight, which is around 3 heaped tablespoons. This is a good starting point. Obviously, there's going to be some variety between people based on size and activity level. So experiment until you find what works for you. You want a meal to leave you feeling satisfied but not stuffed. Around 3 on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not at all full and 5 is, oh my goodness, I feel sick. If I don't lie down soon, I'm going to explode. It's easy, it's sustainable, and it's the method I use to keep my waistline stable. And method 3 is a bit of a hybrid. So track for a couple of days, including some of your default go-to meals. For example, a couple of breakfasts and lunches that are around the 500 to 600 calorie mark. Then move on to the balanced plate method and consider tracking as a bit of an audit a couple of times a year. And finally, in terms of how not to lose your mind, there's a couple of considerations. The main one being that you do need to leave a little space in your life for the food which isn't as nutritious but you still enjoy, because every so often you're probably going to want the cake or the pizza, a family birthday, a meal out with friends, or just because. Eating is a social occasion, and do you really want to spend the next 20 to 30 years avoiding all gatherings because you can't eat anything? Almost certainly not. Now, I feel like I say this almost every video, but if you're new to my channel, then know this. If you restrict and cut a whole food group out of your diet, the evidence shows that you are likely to crave it and more likely to overeat it. Now, this is why most people can't stick to the keto diet forever. And ultimately, that's what we want, something that's going to keep us healthy as we age, not a quick fix. And if we want something sustainable in the long term, we're going to need a little bit of wiggle room. Allow me to present the Ruth Machin Venn diagram of nutrition. You are aiming for the intersection between food which is good for your body and food which you enjoy. Now, there's a couple of ways to get there. Firstly, cooking more nutritious versions of your favourites, and secondly, balancing your overall diet as well as your plate. Now, to achieve the latter, I suggest something around an 80-20 split. So 80 to 90%, you want to eat the nutritious stuff. These are your everyday foods. And then leave 10 to 20% for the stuff you enjoy that ain't so nutritious. These are your occasional foods. And zero guilt, because life is just too short for guilt and regret, particularly when it comes to food. Let's free up our minds to focus on things that really matter. So with the occasional foods and keeping things in balance, my idea is to have a little bit of a think. What are the foods that you really enjoy? What lights you up? For example, I don't really like donuts, so even if they're there, I'm probably not going to eat one. And I find that a big old greasy burger can make me feel a bit icky afterwards. So again, not something I do very often. And as far as fries go, well, I could take them or leave them. Pizza, proper Italian pizza mind, that is another matter altogether, as is a flaky breakfast pastry. I had a pistachio pano chocolate once and I still think about it. What are your occasional foods and what makes you feel a bit meh? Write it down in your workbook and start to tune into your body. So I had a really big breakthrough with a client once. She'd lost touch with her body's appetite signals after years of yo-yo dieting. And she had a revelation of feeling a bit jittery and a little bit ill after eating a really heavy sugar-laden breakfast. And she'd listened to her body. So with the occasional foods, make a little bit of space and enjoy them with intention, not on autopilot. And if they're showing up daily without you choosing them intentionally, then they're no longer occasional. My other advice is to go for quality over quantity. Choose something really delicious made with good ingredients, like this amazing cruffin from a local bakery. Half croissant, half muffin. Who knew that such divine madness existed? Filled with a raspberry cream cheese filling and not too sweet. 600 calories of pure bliss enjoyed with a latte after a dog walk in a local wood. And entirely inconsequential in the context of my whole dietary pattern. Because a cruffin once in a while when I eat all of that healthy stuff is going to have no consequence in the long term. And as a viewer once told me in the comments, I try to think of it as granting myself grace, not giving myself license. So thank you, KSOL-PX2SL, if you're still watching. Which brings us neatly onto stage 3, how to stay on track. Because sometimes life just gets in the way and the best laid plans go out the window. The holiday where the occasional foods become the everyday and it's hard to get back to real life. The conference where all you could find was a really nasty sandwich. And the work deadline where you just don't have the time or energy to cook from scratch. It can be really hard to get back into the swing of things. So how do you stop things unravelling and your new healthy habits disappearing faster than a rat up a drain pipe? Well, you could try this 4-step system. Number 1, recognise what has slipped. Reacquaint yourself with your list of goals. 2, reframe it. Repeat after me. You are only human and life happens. Look at where you are now, compare it to where you started and confirm that yes, you are making progress. Reflect. What got in the way? Could you have done things any differently, but be realistic? You might not have been able to. Is there anything you can learn? And reconnect. What small action can get you back on track, moving towards the future you? And most importantly, show yourself a little bit of self-compassion, not self-criticism. So that's it, my complete 3-stage process. Because fat loss is about more than diet and exercise. It's about the behaviour and systems which break the task down and avoid the overwhelm. And having a process for resetting when life gets in the way. And this is how you make nutrition work in real life. However, your chances of success are significantly higher with the right mindset. So watch this video to see how you get around tackling one of the biggest causes of self-sabotage I see in clients, and I'll see you there.